What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Around the Burgh. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shane Kubis. Shane, how you doing today?
Feeling pretty good because we don't have to talk about whether or not our first round quarterback is signed anymore, which
That's
is
very
cool.
true. That's very true. And again, as soon as we say something and we
hmm
question it on a podcast, the very next few days or the next week, it gets resolved. So,
Yeah,
so the good news is we have Kenny Pickett signing his contract, 4 years, about 14 million, fully guaranteed. About what we expected, honestly.
yeah. But it was really about when, and then if there's anything specific about it that's out of the ordinary, which really it doesn't seem like it. So
Yeah, I think I remember reading something, and I think I might have sent it to you, but I can't remember if I did. But it was kind of explaining what the problem was, and it was just kind of about like how certain guarantees were prorated over the
yeah,
duration of the contract. So that was kind of the detailed sticking point that we talked about last time.
yeah. It's always
Um,
something little like that that's just
exactly.
a little different. Yeah,
The interesting thing that I found is that Kenny Pickett is actually the odds-on favorite across pretty much every big sports book in the United States to be the offensive rookie of the year, which I find very interesting.
yeah. I saw that too, and it's really weird to me because like it'd be one thing if this was a different team, right?
hmm
Because the Steelers, I just don't see them unless he blows them out of the water and blows Mitch out of the water. I don't see him getting the start initially, right?
hmm
Like, and we'll talk more about some of that stuff later, but it would be surprising to me to see him actually trot out week one at this
hmm
point, just simply because I think they signed Mitch for a reason, right? They think that he
Mhm,
can win them games and they want to give him that opportunity, I believe.
mhm.
And will we probably see him at some point? It's probably a good shot that we will. Most first round quarterbacks get in there at some point.
Yeah.
But playing enough to be the rookie of the year when you have guys like Brees Hall for the Jets, I expect to have a good workload as a rookie. Even some of the receivers, Garrett Wilson on the same team. Like, there's going to be guys that I think are skill position players that play enough and put up enough stats where a quarterback might not win it just by playing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the reason why he's the favorite is just because traditionally, if you just want to bet on offensive rookie of the year, betting
Yeah,
on a quarterback
it's a
is
good
a
bet.
smart bet. Um, and then there's only one first round quarterback this year, and only one that is really in contention to start because you look at the other guys like Desmond Ritter, probably not, even though he's in a pretty similar situation, but the team talent is not there around him.
No,
And then you've got Malik Willis in Tennessee, and he's definitely not going to start
no,
unless there's an injury.
right.
Um, and then help me out. What name am I
The
forgetting?
Panthers roll
Oh,
like
yep,
he might go with. Well, I can't think of his name off the top of my head right
Corral.
now. Corral,
Corral.
yeah. They might go with him just because Darnold is so bad, but I
Yeah,
still think Darnold probably escapes the preseason at least as a
yeah,
starter.
hmm
Maybe that doesn't last super long, but I'd be surprised if it is anything more than,
yeah,
7, 8 weeks before we see him probably.
yeah. And in that
So
case, again, you have um, a team that's has does. Oh, I guess they have a good offense, but the offensive line is awful.
it's
And they're
definitely a
good
work in
skill
progress. It's a
players.
work in progress,
But
yeah.
yeah, that
So
team is just people aren't really high on them. And then Sam Howell at the Commanders is fifth round pick. They have Carson Wentz. They have Taylor Heineke, so he's like
yeah,
third on the depth chart.
yeah. One of those two will start over him no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just assume that if he does get an opportunity, Pickett would probably get the most games to start.
Right.
But like you said, everything we've heard out of the mini camp and OTA so far is that Trubisky's been really good and Pickett has been good, but he hasn't been to Trubisky's level to the point that he could supplant him as the
Right.
starter that we would know at this point.
hmm
Um, but and then even like so like the next ones are like Drake London at plus 700 ish, Brees Hall at plus 800 ish, Traylon Burks at plus 800 ish, Christian Watson at plus 800, and then you get into a lot of guys like plus 1,000 where you get
Right.
Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Sky Moore, James Williams is up to plus 1,300, and then I know that like George, some people are just kind of like finding like George Pickens is the value bet because he's like plus anywhere between plus 2,500 and plus 5,000. So I mean, the plus 5,000 is a pretty good bet, honestly.
Oh yeah, that's because again, he's a guy that like he might not get a ton of targets, but if they're good targets and the type of targets I think he could be like a 10 plus touchdown guy.
And
So
listen,
that might be
Steelers
enough.
Steelers rookie receivers, regardless of how the rest of their careers turn out, the exception was like James Washington. Really, like that rookie year is almost always pretty good. Think about
Yeah.
guys like Chase Claypool had 11 touchdowns as a rookie.
hmm
Deontay, despite the quarterback play, had a good year as a rookie.
hmm
Juju exploded as a rookie, so
Yeah,
the history is good for him as well.
for sure. Yeah.
In terms of another recent transaction, the Larry Ogunjobi contract, it seems like it's worth up to $8 million with the incentives. So, that's, a decent contract for a guy that was getting, that times five in a
Yeah.
3-year
Right.
deal earlier this
Right.
offseason.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of when I like was looking at the depth chart and like kind of like my 53-man roster prediction that I just have, I was wondering. I think this might make somebody the odd man out, probably Montravius Adams, because if they want to keep Ogunjobi and all the guys we had talked about, yeah, obviously you have Cam 1, Tyson Alualu 2,
Yeah,
Chris Wormley 3, DeMarvin Leal is going to stay because he's a draft pick,
of course.
and then you have Larry Ogunjobi probably, and then you still have Isaiah Loudermilk. So I think Montravius Adams might be on the chopping block to make the active roster. Honestly,
It's definitely possible. I'm curious how they view the numbers game there, like how many guys they really want to have going into the
hmm
season. Because like realistically, you could try to see if you could shove Loudermilk through practice squad still because he's only been in the league a year.
yeah,
You could try because I don't know how many teams would view him as a true like contributor at this point
yeah,
because he played
maybe
well last year, but like
in
he's
very
really a
limited
Steeler,
doses. Yeah,
but he's definitely a Steelers type of guy more than
yeah,
other teams. So like maybe you could stash him with the expectation he's probably going to have to come up and play at some point for
hmm
somebody. But it is tough to keep the amount of guys that are capable of making a roster right now.
yeah. I think they'd be more likely to try that with Adams, even though I know that I feel like now the rules are a little more lax in the post
They
COVID
are.
world where you can kind of move guys around willy nilly. And I think they'd be more reticent to lose Loudermilk than Adams because Loudermilk's a draft pick. And I think they really like his developmental path, whereas Adams is kind of like, hey, we kind of found this surprising guy off the scrap heap, but if somebody else wants him, that's not the worst thing in the world. But
Yeah.
we've talked up Montravius Adams a lot as a contributor, and now I'm wondering if he's even going to make the team.
Yeah, I mean he definitely has like he has more juice, right? That's a big deal
Mm,
to some teams, right? But at the same time, like Laudermilk probably has a better role in our on the defensive line as it stands right now. Like it
mhm.
just depends on what they want as that last guy off the bench, right? Like what matters more to them in that context.
Yeah, and I think you probably want Loudermilk because he is more of that
Mm-hmm.
run stopper, whereas
Right.
Ogunjobi brings you that pass rush thing, which I think they kind of wanted with Adams.
Yeah.
Next story, I guess we can talk about this a little bit. Mike Tomlin went on the Pivot podcast, which I'm not sure exactly who the host is, but Ryan Clark was there along with Fred Taylor and somebody else there.
The linebacker from I
Oh,
forget what his
Channing
name. Yeah,
Crowder.
Crowder.
Yeah.
Yeah, Crowder from he was playing with the I know
Sure.
he played for the Dolphins and
Okay.
stuff, so.
And he had a lot to say. They kind of asked him a lot of questions, and you say that, but also it was a lot. Like it was basically just a panoply of Tomlinisms.
Yeah, Tomlinism clinic. If you,
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
that's what it was. It was a clinic on how to talk like Mike.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Everybody's like,
crazy.
"Oh, he's saying all these great things." It's like, yeah, but is he really saying any? Like, there was obviously the AB comment where he said, we'd be fine with bringing him back, for a 1-day retirement. What deal? But there's no way we're bringing him back on like
No,
a real
which I
contract.
think we all know that,
Yeah,
right? Like, not he didn't have to say it, but it is, yeah.
yeah. But it was cool to hear him kind of just talk about his philosophy of like being a coach, being a teacher, being a leader, and all that. That was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's always
And
fun to
then,
see him talk
yeah,
for a while.
exactly. And then going along with that, returning to the odds and the betting kind of stuff. Apparently, I think this was according to Bet Online,
Yeah,
Tomlin's odds to be the first head coach fired or resign or whatever were 16-1, which was the 12th best odds, which was pretty shocking to me.
yeah. It's the problem is like we are getting to that point with Tomlin where like the years he's coached is getting
Mhm.
about to where like obviously Cowher was at and stuff like that. So like maybe it's just the thought of like if it doesn't go well, maybe the Steelers are finally at a point where they would consider it. But
Mhm.
I doubt it. We all know that. Like it would have to be a disastrous,
Yeah.
just complete utter failure from top to bottom type of season for him to actually get fired.
Yeah.
So I think that if you're going to bet on a coach to be fired, just ignore his name.
Yeah. I mean,
Honestly,
he has the
like it's
same
just not
odds as
worth it.
John Harbaugh, which I think
Which again,
that's telling. Yeah.
whatever, whatever. Like it just that's a bet you don't need to make for anyone
No.
listening at home. I don't give much betting advice. That's one I will tell you probably don't need to make that bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
So
odds were like plus 3,000. So obviously, like really long odds, but it's not going to happen because, like,
no,
again, the
it's not how we do it.
Steelers don't fire coaches, and like technically they didn't fire Cowher. He
He
just
just
decided to
retired.
leave.
Yeah, he just left.
Um,
Yeah,
and I guess you kind of say the same with Noel, but that was just kind of coming to its
right.
course. But yeah, I mean, Tomlin's like if you watch that podcast, like you can tell, like he still loves this game.
Yes.
He wants to be a mentor to guys like Terrell Austin and Brian Flores. I know Kevin Goldberg just retired, but I think he wants to be kind of that transitional leader into the next phase of Steelers football. And whether that's with Kenny Pickett or not, I think he's like, all right, like now we have a quarterback. And he's talked a lot about like how he's kind of excited to get into this new stage where,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm trying to think exactly what he said, but like embracing uncertainty
Yes.
was the way he put it. And that's something he was looking forward to. Um, so, I think that that's just ridiculous that unless they go like 0-10 and
Right.
it's just
And you
off
could
and like
tell
no
that the
injuries,
team
it's
isn't,
just,
the team isn't listening to
yeah,
him. Like, and that's the thing is, I think that realistically, it's going to take Tomlin either choosing to stop coaching
yeah,
or a period of time where he is consistently not getting them to winning football.
yeah.
So I mean, if you're looking at a timeline, he's going to be the coach of this team for probably minimum 5 more years, right?
So his
Minimum,
contract
and that's like,
is
yeah,
over in 2024.
right. But
So,
I expect unless he decides to quit or the team decides to for some reason, again, like losing seasons back to back, that type
mhm,
of stuff. I think he's going to coach for minimum 5 more years. I think that's what he probably
yeah.
wants to do at minimum, and then he'll probably take it from there, kind of.
I think this year could be interesting for like him getting an extension because like if this year goes probably better than expected, he
Yeah,
might get the extension now. Whereas if this year kind of goes kind of as we expect, where it's another middling season, maybe they wait till until after next year and see how
right. To
next
see
year goes.
see how they both feel. Honestly, probably.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're gonna get into our next segments now. As this is the middle of the summer, we're gonna kind of dip into the network TV debate show framework of things. So I've come up with a few statements that I'm gonna pitch Shane, and I'm between fact or fiction or overreactions or whatever you want to call it. But you can say like how much you kind of disagree or agree with these statements as I read them. So the first one is that Mitchell Trubisky will start all 17 games for the Steelers.
I would say that's fiction. I
Okay.
think that realistically, whether it's maybe at the end of the season or not in the playoff hunt, and they want to throw Pickett out there if he hasn't played,
Hmm.
whether it's injury, obviously you can't really factor that in, but that could come in play, or just he beats him out at some point, or Trubisky's not getting it done. I think some combination of those things are likely to happen. So I think we're going to at least see Pickett play a couple games, if not multiple games.
Yeah, I think that just for injury, the smart bet would be to take
Yeah.
Pickett starting at like over under zero point 0.5, like take the over just to that one game where
Yes.
Trubisky's hurt, or you know, maybe they're kind of out of the playoff hunt in the
Right.
last 4 weeks, and like, all right,
Just throw him out
we'll
there.
we'll see,
Yeah.
we'll put him out there, we'll see how it goes, just to get
Exactly.
his feet wet. Yeah, so I think I'd agree with you with that one. Okay, Najee Harris will lead the NFL in touches, carries, rushing yards, and yards from scrimmage.
I definitely think that's we'll say overreaction this time
Okay.
because realistically, the offensive line is better, right?
Hmm.
We don't really have anyone still that I can confidently say is going to take significant touches away from him, right? And Tomlin himself said he's a bell cow, right? That's
Hmm.
what he is. For him to lead in all of those categories, I just don't think the efficiency is going to probably be there, even if he
Hmm.
does get the most touches or carries. Somebody, whether it's Jonathan Taylor repeating his success,
Hmm.
whether Derrick Henry gets back to his success after an injured season,
Hmm.
God forbid Christian McCaffrey actually plays like 15, 16, 17 games. There's going to be guys who have enough of a share of the offense to compete with him there and probably have more chance to have better efficiency than he'll have.
I think touches and carries are definitely
That's definitely a
within.
good shot. Yeah.
Yeah, just because they are going to use him in the passing game. He is going
Yes.
to be like really the sole running back. Yards, rushing yards is going to be tough, like you
Yes.
said, because of
Just
guys like
tough.
Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, guys
Hmm.
like that. And then yards from scrimmage, I think that could be decently within the cards because again, he is going to be used in the passing game. Um, guys like the Titans are kind of weird about it. I know the
Yeah,
Colts kind of they probably want to get Taylor cycled out because they like Naheem Hines a lot.
they do.
They
Yeah.
have Philip Lindsay somehow now as their third back, which is crazy.
Their backfield's
Yeah,
pretty well fleshed
yeah.
out for sure.
And then
So
obviously the Browns like to cycle guys in and
they
out,
do.
and they have Kareem Hunt still, although he could be traded. But still, I think that that's possible. But yeah, rushing yards will just be tough to do by
That'd be
himself.
tough. Yeah.
All right, so Deontay Johnson will earn a contract worth more than $20 million per year in 2023.
That's a fact in my opinion.
Okay.
Because he would have to either miss significant time,
Hmm.
right, or completely fall flat compared to his past 2 seasons, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't see an improved offense overall allowing that to happen for him if he actually plays.
Hmm.
And I don't think the drops and other things that have kind of gave people questions about him are going to be there enough to really depress his value. I
Yeah.
mean, we've seen guys. I mean, just today, McLaurin got 71
Mhm.
million over 3 years. Yeah. Do I think Terry McLaurin's a better receiver? Yes, I do.
Yes, no question.
But I mean, he'd have to make significantly less per year than what Terry just got on a newer contract that's going to be coming up next year, right? Like the odds of some team not being willing to give him that, or even the Steelers maybe giving him something similar to that. I just don't see that happening unless he just falls flat completely.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree with you. I think McLaurin is definitely a better receiver. That extension off the rookie deal is kind of weird. So
It is.
that would be different than Johnson's. Obviously, he is just. Although no, they were in the same class actually, right?
They were, yeah.
Okay, so it is kind of the same thing. It's just I think they would probably want a longer deal for Johnson.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be very interesting to monitor. Okay, my next one is Pat Freiermuth will lead the Steelers in receiving touchdowns.
Ooh, that's a good one.
There was
I think,
actually I think it was from Marco Boli, and it was like Pat Freiermuth will catch more than 10 touchdowns or fewer than 10 touchdowns. I was like,
yeah.
honestly, 10 is the perfect number. Like, I don't feel comfortable saying more.
Yeah,
I don't feel
think,
comfortable saying
yeah.
less.
It's because I feel like realistically, he is the red zone threat right on this team. Like even bringing Pickens in, bringing like what we see from Claypool maybe in the slot, maybe he becomes more of a weapon there again.
Yeah.
But he is the guy once we get into the 20, 15, 10 yard range, right? Like he's the guy. So I don't want to say I think it's a proper reaction. I think it's not overreaction. I think I think it'd be the smartest bet right now you could make. But I could see like a Pickens if he goes off or has some red zone targets himself. Like I could see someone else doing it, but I think he's the guy that you'd want to be that guy right now.
I feel really good about this one. Like if I could place money on like who to lead the Steelers receiving touchdowns,
right? Like I think if you're doing that,
I absolutely would put it on Freiermuth.
That's
like
the bet. Yeah.
You know, even if he's minus odds, like I'd feel really good about him picking this category. All right, now we're going to flip over to the defense, and the Steelers will not lead the NFL in sacks or break 50 sacks again this season.
It's got to happen at some point, right? Like,
yeah,
realistically,
I think it's been 4 years in a row now.
I think they'll do it again. I think they'll get to 50 sacks again. I really do.
Now it's a 17th game. It's easier, but yeah,
it is. But I think they're going to now whether they'll lead in the that's like every year. There's always teams that come out. Like I could see the Chargers being a really big team to compete with us this year, adding Mac to it, with everything they have going on.
This is getting really into it, but like they'll be and like Steelers are playing in a tough division as well. But the AFC West is obviously going to be a grind, and a lot of these teams are going to be like, passing the ball a lot because they're going to be in shootouts with each other. Whereas the AFC North is much more of a grinded out, fewer passing attempts division. For all that matters, it's probably negligible in the long run, but it's, an interesting variable to consider.
Yeah, I do think that we could very easily at least hit the 50 sacks again, if not actually lead the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I think it'll be interesting to monitor because I think they could maybe take a step back. Ideally, maybe just because they have fewer opportunities where they have to get sacks.
That's very possible too. Like that's something you have to consider. But I
maybe
think
a higher like conversion rate of sacks where it's like if the opportunity where you like need one on third down or whatever and you get one, but maybe not because coming in bunches as much. But
exactly. Yeah.
So so the Steelers will not be a top 10 defense again in 2022. This is kind of flipping it because last year
I'm willing to say that that's fiction in my opinion.
Okay.
Like because realistically, it would take even more injuries than last year, in my opinion, to get us outside of the top 10 defenses overall. I mean, we've put more money into defense than any team in the NFL, and we have a defensive-minded coach. We have Brian Flores brought in to help with the defense. Everything points to us going all in on making this defense rival like the 2019 defense, if not better. Like that's what we're going for. Because I think that they all know like that's our best route to continuing to win games and be dangerous if we get in the playoffs. Because even these high-powered offenses, at some point, they're going to have to deal with us on our defense if they're playing well. I think that that's very likely to happen again.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you just look at yards last year, the Steelers were technically top 10 in yards. And oh shoot, where'd the points go? So and obviously they were like last in rushing, and I think that they were ninth in passing as well. So that just shows you how valuable passing is.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that they are going to improve, like you said. I think this defense is going to be a lot more, kind of unfortunately, like the defenses of like the early 2010s, where you had a lot of problems in the secondary, but rushing the passer and stopping the run were very easy. But I think you'll see this defense get back to more of a normal form this year. And I think that getting in the top 10 is very realistic. Okay, so this one's kind of a two-parter, and you can handle them separately or together, whatever you want. TJ Watt will not reach 20 sacks this season, and Alex Highsmith will record 10 plus sacks or 12 plus. I wonder where your number is for that.
I feel like definitely choosing, if I'm going to look at it from which do I think is more likely.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think it's more likely that Highsmith breaks 10 than TJ hits 20 again, simply because if you're looking at averages, I mean, not many guys ever even approach 20 sacks in a season more than one time, right? I mean, we saw JJ ironically do that a couple times, but it's really hard to do. I mean, obviously looking at the way Watt played last year, it's hard to look at him and not say, yeah, he could do it again. Yeah, he certainly could. But I'm probably not betting on that, especially with a healthier defense than last year, where more guys are going to be able to actually help him and be out there. Maybe take some of the sacks that he had to get just purely based on being the last guy there than last year. So I think Highsmith could break out as that number 2 edge rusher and get 10 plus sacks this year.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just look at Watt's sack production the last few years, like in 2018, he had 13, 2019 had 14 and a half, 2020 he had 15, and then 2021 he had 22 and a half. So just statistical regression will bring you back down towards 15, but like it still could be like 18 sacks.
Yeah, it's like 16, 17. It's still insane, but it's not going to be like going for the sack record back-to-back years is just not likely from a statistical standpoint. He could have a better overall season next year, technically, if you look at all the metrics than he had last year and still not hit 20 sacks.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with regards to Highsmith, like I'm kind of wondering where we are on like kind of like the hype cycle right now, because I think that now it's kind of starting to catch on with not Steelers people about how good Highsmith is when he's healthy. So I think 12 might be a little lofty, but I think 10 is definitely in the cards. And like you said, he might be able to steal some of those from TJ. Honestly,
that's kind of what I'm banking on. Is like I could see him playing obviously even better than last year when he was healthy, but getting there a couple of times more than he did last year, where Watt had to kind of circle around and finish the sack and stuff like that. So,
all right, next one is Devin Bush will not be re-signed at the end of the season.
Ooh.
I tried to keep most of these positive because that's
more fun. Yeah. Man,
the what ifs are all like kind of positive, if you will. Like, so these are some of these are negative, but this is interesting for me.
Devin Bush will not be re-signed at the end of the season. I feel like what I expect to happen is I expect Bush to get better this year. And it's really about, does he get so much better that he gets a long-term contract, or does he get good enough that they bring him back on a short contract?
Like a Cam Sutton deal,
right? I think it's
20 million,
something like that. Yeah, I think that's probably very likely that he's at least brought back in some capacity. Maybe it's on like a 1 or 2 year deal because he proved enough that he at least can compete to be a starter again. Whatever it may be. But I'd be surprised unless he really bottoms out that they don't at least bring him back to some capacity.
Yeah, honestly, one of the big reasons I would think maybe not is that he might like get hurt, and then you see guys like Buddy Johnson
step up,
or even like Mark Robinson or somebody like actually. And apparently, there's some talk about Ulysses Gilbert finally having a healthy offseason, which I'm like, all right.
Honestly, if he plays, good for him, man.
Yeah,
I will literally I will shake his hand at training camp when I go if I'm able to and be like, good for you, like play, do it.
Yeah, this is like apparently the first offseason that he hasn't been like dealing with an injury or whatever.
Coming into
exactly.
Ridiculous.
So
like, I hope so. Good for him.
That could happen. Unlikely, but still. But like maybe somebody else steps in, like, all right, like we can let Devin go and like we can go with a guy like Buddy Johnson or whoever going into next season. But I really am rooting for him to have a great season and get back to that 20 or like early 2020 form where he was a really good player. I think honestly he can, and that's so.
Yeah, if him and Jack can be the best versions of themselves that we've seen, this is going to be a very, very, very good linebacking group.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so next ones are Akella Witherspoon and Terrell Edmonds will be re-signed to long-term deals.
I think that's unlikely. Okay. I think that Terrell at this point I think he's a good starting safety. I feel like ideally they want to try to upgrade from him, and I think you can tell that based on the way the offseason played out with him. Now, if he takes another step up, obviously that changes things. But I think if he's at the level that he's at now, and that's just what he is, I think they will look to upgrade at some point. Now, Akella, I think the problem with him is just at this point, I think is he 27 or 28? One of the two, I want to say.
I want to say 27, because I believe he was in the 2015 draft.
I think
He's 27. He just turned 27 in March,
just turned
actually.
27. So, like, for
2017.
me, for him to get a long-term deal, I mean, the only really corner that we've given a long-term deal recently to is Joe Hayden, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they're going to treat him the same way. I don't like his skill set. I don't think is likely to age as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I could see him being on the team again past his contract, but I don't see it as a long-term deal in any way.
Oh, so actually, he signed a 2-year contract.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay, okay, so that's my bad. I thought that it was a
I expect him to, if he were to be re-signed after his contract, it's probably going to be like 1 year or 2 years, something like that.
Okay, that's okay. Then that's kind of a moot point. But anyways, okay, we'll move on to the last one of these for this exercise. Is Chris Boswell become the league's highest paid kicker?
If they do it by like $100,000 a year, just to be
just to troll the Ravens,
right? Just to be like, hey, we have the high, like
outside
of that,
just to force the Raven, just in case like auction, like keep upbidding the Ravens for Justin Tucker, like you got to keep paying him more. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll happen regardless.
Probably not.
But it would be funny
they know that as much as the Steelers view him as a great kicker, and he is, like, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna try to start the bidding it where Tucker's already at. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's it for that segment. So now we're going to move into a what ifs or alternate universe segment, which is a big thing in pop culture these days, whether it be mostly in Marvel, but a lot of other properties are kind of getting into this as well. All right, so we're only gonna do ones that are kind of in our lifetime or collective memory, because I think we could obviously like say like, oh, like what if they drafted Dan Marino in 1983? And it's like, yeah, that's a big one, but like we weren't alive, so we don't really know what else.
Or what if Jackie Smith catches that touchdown, or Cowboys, like stuff like that.
And again, we're only doing stuff that like if it went the other way, like would help the Steelers. Not doing because you could go like so many bad ways where it's like, what if this just didn't happen? It's like, okay, then it would not.
What if we didn't draft Joe Green? Like, we know like that's
not
good. Not good. Yeah.
So I guess you could say this is also kind of bad in another way. It's like, oh, like you're thinking about things that could have happened and didn't. It's like, yeah, but that's more fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
All right, okay, so we're gonna start in 2004, and this is like kind of right in the beginning of my football fandom. And I was still pretty young, so I have my memory's a little hazy of this game exactly. But it's the 2004 AFC Championship game where the Steelers got boat raced by the Patriots, 41-27.
Yeah.
Mostly because Ben Roethlisberger threw 3 picks. And I think at least one of them was
I know one was a touchdown at least. Yeah. I know.
And actually he threw an interception on the opening drive.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the ensuing drive, the Patriots kick a field goal. The next Steelers drive, Jerome Bettis actually fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a 60-yard touchdown to Deion Branch. So 2 drives, 2 turnovers, and the Patriots are up by 2 scores.
Yeah.
So they get Steelers get a field goal, punts. I'm trying to find the next interception. Towards the end of the second quarter, Ben throws a pick 6 to Rodney Harrison, which returned 18 yards for a touchdown. And then we've got a few touchdowns to kind of keep the game interesting. But then I think Ben throws another pick. Okay, yeah, he throws another. Oh no, there it is. In the middle of the fourth quarter, that seemingly kind of iced. Well, the Patriots scored another touchdown, but the game was pretty much over at that point. So, so I guess the question is like, so if Ben doesn't throw as many picks, and like, let's just say the Steelers win, I believe they face the Eagles in the Super Bowl then?
Yes, they would.
And given the fact that Super Bowl, I guess it was like kind of close, but it wasn't
it was close for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't blow up by any means. And in that, you like obviously you have rookie Ben Roethlisberger, the offense isn't perfect by any means, but I think they have a decent shot at winning that game.
I think that realistically, our offense was more potent when Ben was on fire during his rookie season. I think that it was overall more potent, right? Now, you could argue, does that matter that much in the context of this game? Because it's very much.
Oh, it was only a 3-point game.
Yeah, it was a 20. Yeah,
the Eagles got a garbage time touchdown, kind of.
They did. Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, they definitely could have been in this game, no question.
Yeah, I think that realistically, like from a total team perspective, I think that we were certainly on the Patriots level that year, especially with the way that Ben was playing as rookie. But it comes down to, can he go into the Super Bowl as a rookie? And we saw how he played in his first Super Bowl, which was iffy for sure.
That's nice. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, right. Can we can we expect him to be able to put up that performance in the Super Bowl that he would need to win? I think that if the offense scores, 24 plus points, we win like the Patriots did, because Eagles offense was really good, but obviously had a hobble Terrell Owens. Like it wasn't the same offense it was for parts of the regular season. So I do think there's a pretty good shot we win that game for sure.
And I believe, I'm going to need to look this up now, but I think the Steelers beat the Eagles that season.
I want to say that you're right. Yeah.
I'm looking at the game. Yep, they beat them at home 27-3.
Yeah.
And that
the
was
defense really gave them
yes, that game was famous because that was where one of the first times you had Terrell Owens and Donovan McNabb really going back and forth on the sidelines.
Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they would have had the advantage there at least. And at that time in Ben's career, and I guess this kind of carried over for most of his career, but you just there was always kind of a ticking time bomb for a Ben bad game. And at various points, it kind of just vacillated the gaps between those bad games.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think if you kind of say that, maybe he doesn't have a bad game in this game, it's very likely that he has a bad game in the Super Bowl, especially considering, like you said, how he played in that Super Bowl, comparing it to the next year when he was bad in the Super Bowl. The week before, he lit up Denver.
Yes.
So, I think that it's interesting to think about in terms of it just being a toss-up, and a toss-up at a Super Bowl is better than not getting there at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was kind of one that I thought about. Again, not super well ingrained in my memory, but another one, and this one for this one, I also don't remember the Super Bowl too much about it.
I do,
because I was at a friend's house and with a bunch of people, so I kind of just don't remember watching it as intently. But this is the Rashard Mendenhall fumble against the Packers in Super Bowl 45, which came right at the beginning of, I believe, the fourth quarter.
I believe so.
Yeah. So it's the first play of the fourth quarter, actually, when the Packers were only up 21-17, and the Steelers had the ball at the Green Bay 33. So
I thought it was pretty far into their territory.
So a long field goal, but they're in a dome. 2nd and 2. If he just gets the first down, and they kind of even just get a field goal that drive, the narrative of that game completely shifts. And Mendenhall has had a very interesting post-playing career.
He has, yes, for sure.
Yeah, and I know he recently said, I forget exactly what he said, but it's like the fumble wasn't my fault or something.
He basically said there's nothing he could have done because it was basically the equivalent of a quarterback strip sack. Basically, is how he described it. Which, I mean, it was a brutal hit right on football, right when he was getting the handoff. Basically,
kind of reminiscent of the Jadeveon Clowney Michigan hit, not as violent, but
but similar in the way it played. So, I do understand. I'm not going to sit there and say Rashard Mendenhall is the reason we lost.
Oh no, right?
No. And I think most people don't.
No.
But there's multiple. I mean, the Mike Wallace non-catch that became an interception, if you remember that one. There's a lot of moments in that game where the ball gets there a half second faster, the handoff is cleaner. It makes a difference. And I think especially in that drive, though, that if we go ahead and get a touchdown or even a field goal there, it does dramatically change the dynamic of the game at that point.
Yeah, because in the ensuing drive, the Packers score a touchdown. The next drive, the Steelers get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. And then the Packers get a field goal to push it to 6, and the Steelers don't have enough time can't really get anything going. But yeah, if you just make that even just a 1-point game, that completely shifts everything. And again, maybe they don't win, but maybe it's even closer. And maybe they win another Super Bowl, which would have been
for sure.
Pretty crazy for Mike Tomlin winning 2 Super Bowls in 3 seasons, right?
Yeah, in that time,
yeah. All right, so the next one, and this is probably one of my most painful ones. It's the Tim Tebow game. I think I repressed a lot of this game out of my memory, just kind of reading the game summary and just looking at how the drives developed. But just what an ugly game.
It's funny because I think realistically, if you were to create a highlight reel of the 10 best Tim Tebow throws, probably over half of them are in
at least game. I think at least 4 are from this game.
at least 4, if not more.
For context, he had 10 completions in this game.
But almost every one of them was just a dagger.
Yeah, or just a bomb to Demaryius Thomas.
And that last play, the overtime play, will always be something that will replay in my head because it was just perfect. Every single thing about it was perfect design, perfect execution. You get it to the guy who runs like a horse. Rest in peace to Demaryius Thomas as well. That dude could run unbelievably well for his size, and just we couldn't catch him. It's just there's never gonna happen.
I don't think he retired after this game, but this game effectively retired Ike Taylor.
Yeah, you could tell he couldn't run
they
with
just
guys
went
anymore.
after him in this game.
Yeah,
and
it was over for him.
yeah, but it's funny, like thinking about this game, I again kind of I think I've repressed a lot of it, but the Steelers had to make a pretty big comeback in this game.
They
Going
did.
into halftime, they're down 20-6. They outscore the Broncos. What is it? 17-3 in the second half to tie it going into overtime. And then obviously what happens. But
Yeah,
even if if like somebody else covers Demaryius Thomas, like I'm not sure who would. Again, they didn't have the best corners at that time. And
yeah.
Keenan Lewis, William Gay was mostly a slot corner at that
Yeah,
point.
he was
So
gonna cover him. Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard to look at like what we could have done differently, but at the same time, like when you look, it was also, if you remember, the first year that the playoffs had the
they made a huge deal of it.
Yes, and then the first play touchdown. So
yeah,
it's like it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah,
it's like, all right, that's cool. Well,
yeah, that was so funny because they kept like harping on like, all right, like this is the first time we're doing it. And then just like you said,
one
didn't
play
matter
touchdown,
at all.
ridiculous. And like, all right, well,
and I'm looking at like the starters for this game, and maybe I seem to remember this team being exceptionally injured going into this game, but maybe I'm wrong maybe it was the offensive line that was really banged up.
It may, but I know that I think Jericho Cotchery had a huge game.
He did.
Huge role in this game.
He did. I think he had the. Oh wait, hang on. Oh, wrong. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong tab. He had, I think, the 31-yard touchdown to tie the game.
Yes.
Or to get it within one, and then they kick the extra point. But yeah, Jared Cotchery, very fun. Like last few years of his career with the Steelers.
He was good. Legitimately, I think didn't he have like double-digit touchdowns one year?
I think in 2013 he had like 12 touchdowns,
something like that, something ridiculous. I'm like, all right, good for him. So.
The other aspect of this what if though is that I think if they win this game, they go on and they play the Patriots the next week, and this was the Patriots team that went to the Super Bowl. And I think even if they win this game, they're not beating the Patriots.
Probably not. I mean,
that's prime Edelman. I think Randy Moss was still on the team, and you had Gronk in his prime and Aaron Hernandez in his alive prime.
Yeah, right.
In his football prime as opposed to his starter prime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shout out former NFL Jet scout.
Oh God. You evoked his name. We'll hear from him.
I didn't say his name. I just
but he
his
knows
his alleged profession.
He knows when people are talking about. Anyway, that it's unlikely. I will say that Patriots team was something. So
I just don't really see that happening, even if they do
Probably
win this
not.
game. So it's a moot point. But I'd rather lose to a really good Patriots.
Yeah, I'd rather lose to Brady than Tebow.
Than lose to Tim Tebow, who, aside from that completion, his stat line goes as thus: 9 completions, 20 attempts. It would be 226 yards and 1 touchdown. So couldn't even complete half his passes. And again, like, what was Demaryius Thomas' stat line? Demaryius Thomas, 4 catches, 204 yards and a touchdown, including his 80-yarder, which is just nuts.
Right. Again, just an absolute, just ridiculous stat line for a quarterback to have in a playoff game.
Another fun, Eric Decker didn't have a catch this game.
Yeah,
this was like good Eric Decker.
Sometimes Eric Decker was just running around out there, man. Like he was just having a good time for that Tebow year.
Yeah, he had 1 carry for 9 yards,
right,
and 1 target, and that was
sometimes he just was out there, just running around, and just making it look like he cared about what was going on.
Yeah, that was Also, just the fact that the Steelers have John Clay on this team, who I imagine you would remember fondly.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so now we're gonna jump. We don't have necessarily a game to go with here, but it's the Le'Veon Bell injuries in 2014 and 2016. And the 2014 one is especially frustrating because that was when the offense really kicked off with the Killer Bees.
That was that year he had 2 6 touchdown games back to back with.
Yeah, the year Ben was probably just like Ben.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just like still one of the funniest things.
Bumblebees were working that year.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%.
But Le'Veon gets kind of rolled up on by, I want to say, Drake Kirkpatrick or one of the Bengals defensive backs.
I believe so, yeah.
In like the final quarter of the last game of the season. And I know Mike Tomlin had some words from Marvin Lewis after the game, but essentially it knocked Le'Veon Bell out for the wild card game. And I feel like it's just roll out like Josh Harris and Ben Tate or something.
Something ridiculous. I do remember Harris being in there somewhere, but it was ridiculous.
And Ben just got absolutely murdered because they just couldn't run the offense without Le'Veon.
No, they focused so much of what they did on for him, which makes sense the way he was, especially at that time. But like, you could tell it just wasn't going to work without him.
Yeah, and so that year, that's the year the Patriots get the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, and
Hmm.
obviously the Broncos were very good again that year. The Ravens were, I think the Ravens lost the next week to the Broncos, or is
I
that the
bel
year they beat them with the Hail Mary? No, because that
the
was the Super Bowl year.
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly how the Ravens factored into that playoff race,
Oh,
but
that was the one where they had like the double pass to with Amendola and
oh,
Edelman.
you're right. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the game that they should have beat the Patriots and they didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that with that, I think the Steelers have a decent shot at making a run if Le'Veon
Hmm.
Bell is healthy for that playoff
Yes.
run, because the defense still isn't great, but it's serviceable, and the offense is arguably the best in the NFL that year.
Yes, it was unbelievable for him.
Yeah. So that's something to consider. The other one is the 2016 season, which this is more so in the playoffs
Yeah.
after the Dolphins game or the Chiefs
Hmm.
game,
Yes.
because he was really the entire offense most of the latter half of that year. You think about like the Bills snow game, um,
Yeah.
games like that, um, just him doing crazy stuff, and then he just had to miss the AFC Championship, which I was at, and it was not a fun game to be at.
No.
uh, and so again, I'm not sure that they really beat that Patriots team, but if he's there, maybe they do, and maybe they get the Super Bowl.
Right. It's always a possibility. So
Yeah. So, and as somebody who was a card carrying like pay Le'Veon Bell whatever he wants member, these years were extremely saddening.
yeah, I do wonder. That's a what if in itself. Is like, what if he just takes the contract?
Yeah.
Because like realistically, we saw what happened to him when he left Steelers, but like staying in the system, staying with us, I feel like he at least has 2 or 3 more good years than he ended up having.
Yeah, I think so. And then
You know.
this will get into another what if we have coming down the road, about somebody else that
Hmm.
had a not so positive end of their Steelers career. More on that later. There's two I have for the 2017 season, and
Hmm.
we'll do the more, I guess, the one that has I think fewer ripple effects first. And it's the Jesse James catch non-catch, which it was a catch
Yes, it's a
regardless.
catch. It was a catch.
Um, and this it has fewer ripple effects, but it's very interesting because I think if that touchdown gets properly called, I believe there's about 28 seconds left on the clock. I'll have to find the game summary, but the Patriots get the ball back with like 25 seconds left, let's say, and even if they have plenty of timeouts, they need to score a touchdown to win the game.
Yes.
So I don't think that I think the Steelers win that game.
Yes, I believe so.
And if that happens, they are the number 1 seed in the playoffs, so they would avoid the Jaguars.
Which, yeah, is important
If
in this
the
case.
other playoff games go as they went, in the first round, the Steelers would then probably play the Titans, who would be coming off a 1-point comeback victory against the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I will take us against Marcus Mariota in that
Especially
game.
because they beat the Titans that year 40-17.
Yeah, that was the game that made me go, man, maybe Marcus Mariota ate that
He
guy.
ain't it.
Like that was that. I'm like, because they showed some angles of him just throwing the ball right to us.
That
like,
was
dang.
That was also. Do you remember this? Where I forget exactly why, but the normal cameras were out,
Yes, so they had to
give
show
us
like
the Madden cam, which
and
is
it was
behind the
like
quarterback, and
it
you
was
just watched him
ugly.
throw these ducks over
It
the
was
middle.
so ugly.
Yeah.
It was bad. Yeah,
It was like the perfect, as a Steelers fan, it was like the perfect game for it to happen because you got all these great interception highlights.
exactly. Yeah.
And like they were pretty much winning the whole game. I think they had like a fluky 70-yard touchdown to open the second half, but then the Steelers just rolled them the rest of the time. So I feel comfortable beating the Titans, especially later in the season in that year in 2017. And then you get either the Patriots or the Jaguars at home in the AFC Championship. And they showed that they could hang with the Patriots. The Jaguars, if they had somehow beaten the Patriots, that would have been crazy. And
Yes.
I think the Steelers would have been more prepared for them in the AFC Championship after having a playoff game under their belt. So maybe they go to the Super Bowl and beat the Eagles again.
I will say I think personally that we would beat the Eagles. If we played them.
It's tough.
I personally think so.
Yeah, that team. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that like the Eagles offense like really just got hot, and the Steelers defense was not as good, especially in the back end that year. But it might have been just enough, honestly.
It might have been enough. I think, yeah.
And especially with this other one that I want to talk about, and I think if you combine these two and flip the outcomes, then it's curtains. And that's the Ryan Shazier injury. Like if that just doesn't happen, because I think if that happens, they have a much better chance of beating the Patriots kind of straight up without needing the Jesse James catch, because Gronk was absolutely killing them. Like the last Patriots touchdown drive was like 4 straight passes to Gronk down the middle against like Sean Davis and Mike Mitchell, and he was just eating us alive.
It was just there was nothing we could do, and
No.
like Shazier at least gives us a physical specimen that can
Yes.
try to match him if nothing else. I mean,
Yeah.
make it harder if nothing
Yeah,
else. Like,
because like I mean, of all things, like Ryan Shazier was an absolute freak athlete, so he would have been at least. And let's say like even if that doesn't happen and this Patriots still win, I think that having Ryan Shazier there helps them against the Jaguars if that game.
it really
if
does.
Same order of things happen.
Fournette's not
No.
running through our like he's at least going to catch him and keep him from getting the huge gains and stuff.
No, and like I know that team, like they said, they were distracted by like kind of looking ahead. Like I don't think that the Shazier injury distracted them from that game. But I think just having him there would have been helpful as opposed to whoever was like Sean Spencer,
Yeah, or
whoever was
ends
playing
up being,
next to Vince Williams, which was just a disaster. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting one because I think that the Steelers have a really good shot of like making some noise if some of those things go the other way. And obviously that would just be great if Ryan Shazier was, still able to walk and just
be, a player in general.
Yeah.
Just, that would be great for him and for us. So,
all right, so I've got 2 more for 2018, and they're very different. Well, I guess not because they're both kind of like mental issues. So the first one is Chris Boswell just not having a case of the yips, which if you look at his numbers,
such a strange outlier.
It's so insane because every other year he's at least 84% as a field goal kicker. In 2018, he was 65%.
It's funny because like kicking is definitely one of those things that is a higher variance position, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not many guys who are consistently at the league average or better every year, percentage wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Boswell has been, like you said, literally every season minus that year. It's such a weird, just outlier type of season, and obviously, I hope we never see it again for however long he's here. But he hasn't given any indication that's going to happen. So like it was very weird for sure watching it.
Yeah, and like of those field goals, he's 4 of 6 in the 30 to 39 range, and then 5 of 10 from 40 to 49. So just
something was off with him in those, like,
and then the next year he came back
long
and arguably had his best season where he was 93% as a field goal kicker,
awesome,
highest of his career, and 100% on extra points, tied for highest of his career. So I mean, and that year he comes off a Pro Bowl, which is crazy that he makes the Pro Bowl in 17 above Justin Tucker, I guess, or with Justin Tucker. I forget.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I forget what format they were using that year because they've changed it so much. But yeah, so just sandwich in between arguably his 2 best seasons as a kicker, he's just lost his mind. And I think I'm going to go to the game log now because I think you can look at this and say like, okay, there are at least like 3 games I can find that are like, okay, this like
the Raiders game.
So even the first game, they tie the Cleveland Browns. If he misses a field goal, that's a win. That doesn't do anything. Yeah. So the Denver game, not as much because that was still a touchdown. The Raiders game where he misses 2 field goals, they lose by 3. Really, that's the big one. It's just
that's the biggest one. Was the Raiders game is the one I remember the most. Where I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah, insane.
So.
A few extra points here and there, but they didn't really impact the outcome. So, but yeah, so that doesn't happen. Maybe they win 1 or 2 more games, maybe make the playoffs. The big one obviously is like, what if Antonio Brown just doesn't lose his mind?
That's one that I try not to think about anymore, just because it's like it's so clear that the man never was saying it. Just they managed to keep him under wraps long enough until he just couldn't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if he was as we thought he was, right, as a person and as a player, if he keeps that up for 4 more years, I mean, we're talking about a guy that's being talked about as one of the 3 to 5 best receivers of all time.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, people say like, "Oh, like that 6 years was like the most dominant 6 years."
Oh yeah, it's
of anybody as a receiver. Arguably, anybody ever. Like you put him up with like J.J. Watt's run, Aaron Donald's current run, maybe some years of Aaron Rodgers, and Brady's career in general. But like, yeah, I mean, if those 6 years are elite, if you stretch that out for like maybe just add 3 more and make it like a clean decade of him as a starting wide receiver, it's the best decade by any receiver ever.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was just unbelievable the stuff he was doing. So
yeah,
I would have loved to see that, but
I am wondering. I don't know how it would impact it, but I am wondering like if they had kept Le'Veon, like would that have allowed the offense to kind of be a little more normal because it was so air raid spready, and that kind of allowed Juju to flourish, which was kind of the impetus behind it. So
It started things.
so
Yeah.
if you keep Le'Veon and your offense is more balanced, I'm wondering, does that not happen, or does he get mad at Le'Veon, or I'm just that's when.
Yeah, for me, like I like to think that this was going to happen no matter what happened, just because it's
Yeah,
Antonio.
yeah,
But it is something to wonder for sure. I would say.
yeah, and I think you could also kind of apply this to Martavis Bryant in general. But there's a lot more moving parts there as well.
Yeah,
Because that wasn't as clean of a break. Like you kind of saw it.
No, it was definitely more.
You arguably saw it coming with like the suspension earlier, and then that's Sammy Coates' replacement, not mine. One of the funniest tweets ever, honestly.
Yeah,
I really wish somebody like had tweeted that. I wish we got one of those like once a draft. That'd be so funny.
Mm-hmm. We need one every year.
Yeah. Okay, moving to 2019. Again, we have two, both of them surrounding Ben Roethlisberger. So I think if you talk about just the injury not happening, and Ben has like a normal year, that's the year the Ravens went nuclear. So, maybe the Steelers make the playoffs as a wild card with a good or just league average offense instead of. I looked this up because this is so funny. So, if you look at DVOA, which is defense value adjusted over average, I forget what it is. Dang it! Now I'm gonna look an idiot. But it's a better stat. Defense adjusted value over average. Okay, I was right. Does a better job of explaining like how efficient offenses are by looking at like game situations. If you look at the 2019 Steelers, on offense, if you look at their weighted DVOA, they were the worst in the league at negative 32.7%. The next lowest team was negative 22.5%.
Yes.
So it's 10, and that's the biggest gap between any two teams on the entire list. So just a massive, like worst offense like ever, arguably. And you look at their defense, they were the number one defense at negative 24%, which was just a little over 6% higher than the next best defense. And that was also the biggest gap between any two teams in those rankings. So the Steelers had significantly the worst offense and significantly the best defense in the NFL, and they were just on the same team that year.
And I think what's so interesting about it is like that's why I've always said like if Ben plays, even if he's like just 10% better Ben than we saw in like 2020, right? In 2021, that team wins 12 games.
Yeah.
Like that, the defense. Now, here's the only thing I will say that creates another what if: is do we trade for Ryan Minka Fitzpatrick?
I think absolutely.
Do we make? I hope so, right?
Yeah.
But if we do that and we have Ben, this team wins 12 games. Like that defense was disgusting.
Yeah, for
ridiculous.
Sure.
Like we lost a game right to the Niners where we had like 5 turnovers forced, didn't we? Something like that. Something ridiculous.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
And I'm like,
that was crazy.
Like,
yeah, I mean, so let's say so the injury happens against the Seahawks. Let's say that they still lose that game because Seahawks are good that year, and
they'll win. They'll beat us. Yeah.
Let's say they lose that game. Next week they go at the Niners. They're coming off 2-game losing streak. They almost beat the Niners with Mason Rudolph at quarterback.
Yeah, they get that done.
Let's say they beat them with Ben, so they're 1-2. Home against the Bengals, they win that game. Let's keep that constant. Yeah. Next week, so they're 2-2.
2 at that point.
2-2. The next week, home against the Ravens. This game they lost in overtime because Juju fumbled, and because
I'll give this a W.
And because Mason Rudolph got knocked up by Earl Thomas and Devlin Hodge had to come in. So let's put that one up. So let's see, we got what is that? 3-2.
3-2 at this point.
Okay. At Chargers, they beat Devlin Hodges. We beat this team with Devlin Hodges.
We crushed the Chargers.
Let's say I'd be willing to entertain like this one. You might flip because of how the narratives have changed.
Right, but I still give this. I mean, like
let's just say let's win. So what? 3-2 now or 4-2?
4-2 at this point.
4-2. Bye week. Dolphins 5-2.
Yes.
Colts. They won this game, and it was Jacoby Brissett. Let's say Brian Hoyer's still the starter and Ben's the starter. We win 6-2. Yeah. Home against the Rams, they won this game by 5. Again, a great defensive effort. Let's say they win this one too. So is it 6-2?
7-2.
7-2. I can't count. Okay.
I gotcha.
The next week you have the Mason Rudolph game where you're Thursday night at the Browns. Browns were not great they were up and down. They were Midland this season. So what do you want to do here? Do you want to say this one's a loss?
I don't remember. Did we win the other Browns game?
2 weeks later, yes.
So I'll say we still split with them in some way, so we can keep
Okay,
this
sure,
loss.
that's fine. Okay, so we're
7
say
and 3.
We'll say 8 and oh yeah. Well, let's say 8 and 3 since we're saying we're splitting that series
Right. So
still.
8 and 3. Yeah.
Okay, between those games, you have at the Bengals. They won that game with Devlin Hodges as
We
like the
win that
sole
game.
starter, and
We win
that
that
Bengals
game.
team was awful.
That was bad. We win that game. Yeah.
So 8 and 3. Okay, a few weeks skip ahead at the Cardinals. That was a win with Devlin Hodges.
This was rookie Kyler Murray. I will take the W.
Okay, so 9 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we are home against the Bills, and Devlin Hodges almost beat this Bills team.
He threw 4 picks. We almost
Yes.
win. I will take Ben throwing like 2 instead of 4, and then we win the game by like a touchdown because this is
or
this
just a
is
field
very
goal
young.
even. All right,
Right.
so
This is young Josh Allen. So this
right,
is 10 and 3 at this point.
10 and 3 at New York Jets. Dub.
This is the Jets. Yeah.
11 and 3. Last week at the Ravens.
I'll give that a loss because we gave the other one a win.
Well, fair. Fair. Let's do that because I would say that the Ravens rested a lot of people because they had already clinched the 1 seed or whatever. And it was pouring rain. They didn't want to get anybody hurt. But let's just say
we normally split. We'll say it's
yeah.
split.
So 12-4, like you said, exactly.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think we go 12-4. I think the Ravens still edge us out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just barely, but it's a much closer race at the end of the season. I think honestly that's why that game might end up going down to the wire because they are still playing probably at that point for
maybe
because if we win that game we'll have this we'd have flip records. So
that's a good point.
That's what probably happens.
They were 14-2.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were 14.
So they would have been. So even if this. Oh well.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So
we'd be 12-3. They'd be 13-2.
So
yeah. They'd want to win that game to clinch it.
Yeah, and they were going great that year, so we'll say they win that. I'm trying to find the playoffs for this season. Come on, here we go. Okay, working on it. Come on, there we go. So that would make them what, the 5 seed?
Yeah, because we'd be the top non-division winner. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So wild card. I think that puts them.
We'd be playing the 4 seed that year, right?
Yeah, so we would have taken the place of the Bills. I think it's either the Bills or the Titans.
Yeah.
And they were against the Texans and the Patriots. So, and the Titans did beat the Patriots team because that was kind of the end of the Brady dynasty.
Yes, that was that year. Brady threw the pick at the end of the game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, if Ben's there and they're still cooking at that point, maybe they win that game. Either of those games because the Bills had to go to overtime with the Texans. Titans and Patriots was close as well, so they could. I feel like the Patriots would be tough just because I always feel weird about beating the Patriots.
But I feel like that year though, I give it to us.
If any year for sure,
I give it to us. I don't think their offense was good enough to put up enough points.
The next round, if they won, facing either the Chiefs or the Ravens when they're at the height of their powers, that's probably it.
I would honestly say I'll give us the Ravens game if we get them. Just because it's a playoffs, it's Lamar's first season against us at that point.
It probably would have been in Baltimore. So maybe.
Like I would say we have a decent. I'd give it a 50-50 coin toss in that situation. Chiefs though,
that was the game that they had to come back and beat the Texans after falling down whatever it was. But I don't think.
But they did it in spectacular fashion.
Yeah.
So
they also beat. I think they beat. No, that was 2 years. That was the year before that they beat the Steelers. Anyway,
that was Mahomes' rookie year when he dropped 6 or 5 touchdowns.
Exactly.
Whatever it was.
Yeah. So I don't think it really amounts to much, but it'd just be interesting to see
be way more fun of a team to watch.
How would that team have looked if the offense had just been league average?
If they would have been the 24th best offense, they win 10 games.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean that's kind of what we're talking about, right? It's like that defense was so ridiculous for a number of reasons that you didn't even have to be that good on offense. You just had to not give the ball back every 45 seconds. That's all really it needed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
insane. Okay, so the other 2019 then is, let's say that Ben, regardless of if he gets injured or not, let's say he retires after the 2019 season. I think that's interesting. I mean, obviously then you have the COVID thing, and I'm not saying Ben retiring stops it from happening, but
that'd be a heck of a domino to fall.
Yeah. But then I'm just kind of interested, how does that really affect this entire team's, building strategy? That's the year where you have Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Tua, trying to think if there are any other, I guess Jordan
Love, yeah.
I wonder if the team tries to make a play for one of those guys, or if they just because at that point you haven't seen Mason Rudolph really.
No.
So do you go into the next season with Mason Rudolph?
You see, this is the problem: is the way that Colbert talked about him. I say they go into this 2020 season with Mason Rudolph.
Which honestly, considering it would have been a pandemic year, if that had just been like a throwaway year, fine.
Yeah,
honestly.
But I feel like there's a good shot they just, unless they really liked one of the rookie quarterbacks that were coming in that they thought they could go up and get, which is pretty much just Jordan Love, I guess.
Which also, assuming they would have made the Minka trade, they wouldn't have had that pick.
Right, that's true. They wouldn't have had their first round pick. So if they assume they make it, they definitely not moving. Yeah, so the quarterback in the draft isn't happening.
Yeah,
I don't think there was any significant quarterbacks in free agency that I can remember that were actually attainable that I can remember.
I don't think so.
Because I don't think that wasn't the year that Cousins signed, right? It was the year before.
That's what I was thinking too, and I don't think so.
I think it was the offseason before that, 2018, 2019. But I don't think you get a significant upgrade in free agency, or at least someone they see that they can sign.
Yeah, he signed with the Vikings in 2018.
Yeah, so it was the year before. I feel like they maybe they draft a rookie in the mid rounds if there's anybody they like enough, and then roll with Rudolph and go from there. That's what I think probably happens.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a name at you.
Okay,
Jalen Hurts. Based on what Mike Tomlin has said post Ben, and based on a lot of stuff we know about Jalen Hurts, I think they would have loved Jalen Hurts, especially think about how much they love Malik Willis.
This is true.
They would have loved Jalen Hurts.
Now he
went 2 picks before Claypool.
I was gonna say, so you.
Wait. He might have. Hang on. He might have gone after. Actually, hang on a second.
I don't remember. Wasn't he?
They're really close. I'm looking at.
I know they are.
He went actually 4 picks after Claypool.
That's right. Okay.
They would have drafted Jalen Hurts the second round. Guarantee you.
Probably.
Man,
he'd be fine.
That's crazy. I like him. I like him a lot more than I think a lot of people will do.
I know that. Yeah. I think that he's gonna not be the starter after this year coming up. Personally, I think they draft somebody. I think they take either if they're too good and they don't have enough, they're gonna have the ammo probably regardless to move up.
Yeah, for sure.
But if
because they got that first round pick from the Saints.
Did
they get one from the Titans for this year too? This upcoming year? Okay, yeah, they're going to be ammo, no question.
So I really think that they did that for that reason. I think they already know that barring something unbelievable happening, he's going to be replaced by one of the rookie quarterbacks next year. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, does that mean his career's over? No. I think that he'll end up catching on with somebody else and probably being good. But I don't think they're going to commit to him long term.
It would be really funny, but also really telling about the NFL is if Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts all hit free agency.
That would be one of the craziest scenarios.
And that has to be put in for Brian Flores' lawsuit.
Yes. Yeah, that's an automatic submission right into we have some more evidence that just dropped about last night. 3 quarterbacks who were all
franchise quarterbacks who were all black, all were signed to long-term deals.
Well, I will say in Lamar's case, it's only going to be because he doesn't want to. Because I know the Ravens are already ready to pay him. They've talked about it. He's just like, nah, I'm good. Now, the Cardinals could be a whole different thing. The Eagles already expect it to happen for different reasons.
Yeah.
But that would be hilarious if Lamar's like, nah, that's what he'd have to do, though.
That'd be wild. Okay, so we're going to move into 2020 now. And there's 2, I think. One is a bit more amorphous. The other one's very specific. The first is that Deontay doesn't have his drops.
Yes,
I'll limit it to the 5 games where he really
had a rough
lost
time.
His mind because it wasn't an issue for most of the year. It was just that was 5 weeks, I think. And I'm pulling up his stats now, and depending on where you look, it has different numbers for his drops. But I think Pro Football Focus has it at 13 for the year, and Pro Football Reference has it as 15 or something,
somewhere around there, 13 to 15. Yeah.
So if you go to the 20s, where are the drops here? I think I need to do a different game log thing. 2020. I was looking at it on PFF. That's why. But it's the I think it's the Baltimore, Washington, Buffalo, and Indianapolis games. And Indianapolis is where he clicked back.
He did. He kind of
had drops early. But if he just has just 1 drop per game in those games, I think they can win at least one, maybe two of those games that
They
they've
beat
lost.
Washington, I think, personally.
Probably, yeah. I don't know if
Um,
they beat Buffalo. That'd be a little tough.
Buffalo, they were rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still pretty tough.
Washington's really the big one. Because
Yeah, I think they
definitely
beat
agree there.
Washington.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Because that team desperately needed a bye week.
Yes.
They desperately needed a bye week.
Yeah.
Because things were just falling off the rails so hard end of that year. You get one or two more of those wins to go your way. The issues are still there that are present, but like it gives you a week to just be like, all right, something's not working out. You're like, we need to figure something out. Like it changes. It definitely changes the dynamic of that season. Because it was one of those things, and I'll never forget starting a season 11-0 and not feeling a bit good about it. Like
No.
it just, you couldn't, because you saw the writing on the wall. Like, this defense is out there just holding itself together by the thinnest of margins because the offense can't keep the football at all.
It was like every week was like the Wojak meme where it's like the crying face was like, this team is the worst undefeated team ever. And that, like, every other NFL fan, Steelers fans,
Like,
yes, we know.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, it's like,
we're very aware. We don't know how this is happening. The Jerry from Rick and Morty was like, I just kept crawling and it just kept working.
It just kept working out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one, and this is very specific, is that the Pouncey snap doesn't go over Ben's head in the first snap of the wildcard game.
Man, like, I want to say that it mattered. But
I think that if that happened on the first snap of a game, if that kind of stuff happens, it's over.
Just look at the Broncos.
Exactly.
Super Bowl.
And I don't think you can find enough examples of this happening.
Right.
Where
I hope not.
Where it's proof positive, but you've just seen it where it's like, and the team just, it's over. Like, there's mentally, because you're so hyped up, and then it's just like, all right, we're already down. It's like,
Ben just like, I'm just gonna throw it.
Yeah, and again, like, the game ended up. It definitely wasn't. It got close, probably closer than it deserved to be.
The score was closer than the game was, for sure. But maybe just not starting off that way does.
But that just took the wind out of everyone's sails. It was just not going to happen. So, like, if that snap just goes normally, and it's a handoff or whatever it is, I think that game goes differently. Honestly,
it could. And I remember distinctly sitting there on my bed watching the game and looking at my girlfriend and looking and be like, it's over. She's like,
I said the same.
It's like the second quarter. I'm like, it's over.
No, I said that after that snap. I was like, this is over. That's it.
I didn't go that far yet. I was just like, this is not how I wanted this game to start. But then it kept rolling in. I'm like, oh man, it's over. This is the end.
I don't know who they would face if they won that game. I don't think it would be the Chiefs. So I don't know
if we beat anybody else that year at that point, the way the offense was. Like, it's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to think that this team beats anyone other than the Browns.
Yeah.
And the Browns would have been tough enough even if we don't start that way. So, like, it was so.
So I'm trying. The problem is I'm using Pro Football Reference. They don't list the seeds, so it's hard to tell who goes where. But I think that they would end up having to go back to Buffalo.
Yeah, and that's a tough ask. I mean,
that would be very tough.
I mean, this is the Josh Allen year to kick things off for him. Like, this is when he really showed up. Like, we've had success against him, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But like I remember going to the playoffs. Like, I don't know. Like, I thought we would beat the Browns, right? Because I'm like, okay, this is a young Browns team. Like, we can get it done. I didn't have aspirations past that. Like, I didn't. I was just like, this team is not as good as its record is. So I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're kind of wondering, like, if, again, like, let's play this out. Like, let's say that they get that bye. They get, so there's probably a 2 seed, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Then they get some combination of either the Ravens, the Browns, or the Bills, I would imagine. I'd feel pretty good about winning most of those games. Like, if they get that bye week.
Yeah.
Maybe not the Bills because they were so good that year.
Bills are tough. I think Ravens or Browns we probably can beat. It's really the matchup at that point. But
well, I had fun with that.
Yeah, it was fun. It is fun to, like, as much as it sucks to think about stuff like that sometimes, it is fun to think about. Like, the NFL is one of those sports, especially, right? That there's so many different specific moments in time you can go back and look at and go, man, what would the league itself, and not just the team, but the league look like? Like, imagine, like, the big one obviously people talk about is like, what if Bledsoe doesn't get hurt in 2001, right? Like, does Brady still become Brady eventually? Probably, to a certain degree, but is it the same? Does it start the same way? Like, do they go on that? Like, so many things could have changed the course of the league, let alone a team, right? And it's fun to think about, like, what happens if that takes place, like, and go through it logically and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think the other part is that like you kind of just have to acknowledge it's like we really have no idea what would happen if like
No,
that
we
one
don't
thing
know,
changed.
but like you can
You can
insinuate some
talk
things, right?
yourself into being like, oh, this would have definitely happened better
Yeah,
if
like
only
the
one
Steelers have
thing
won the
changed.
last 10 Super. I can logic my way through that. I won't, but I I can.
That's kind of, and like we talked about the Jalen Hurts thing, and that's like why I also didn't want to like draft ones where it's like, oh, like they drafted so and so
Right.
instead
It's
of
like
Artie Burns. It's like, all right, well, that's a little
we
too
don't
far.
like. Yeah, especially rookies. Like you don't know.
Yeah,
Like
and like I'm not saying Jalen Hurts would have been great in the situation where it's like a post Ben era. I'm just saying like that's probably would have happened based on what we
oh,
know
I
now.
I would I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for us for this week. We're gonna be back in I think 2 or 3 weeks
Mhm.
because I'm busy with travel and getting married, so we'll
Yes.
be
Other
busy over the
important
next two
things
weeks.
too.
So we'll be
Yeah.
back in July with the kind of a training camp preview, position battles,
Yes.
who's gonna make the roster, all that kind of stuff. Because by that time we'll be right around the start of training camp, I believe. I
Yeah.
think it's the
Roughly.
26th.
Yeah. Something like
So
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'll
About the
be
week
like
before.
the week before we'll have our episode. So in the meantime, you can follow us at Mitchell T Wolf OLFE at Shane Kubitz, Shane with a Y. Make sure you're following Around the Block on Twitter, YouTube,
Every
uh,
social media you can think
Twitch,
of.
Facebook, Instagram, anything you can find. Follow ATB Network. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to have you back next time.